And we're kicking off this list with Mr. Satan. Hey, Hulk Hogan ain't no weakling, so neither is this guy. Sure, he's played for laughs, and there really aren't any battles against any major villains in the series he could take on, but in terms of just being a super strong dude and a solid martial artist, Hercule is one of Earth's best. In fact, he's the world martial arts champion. In terms of regular human beings on Earth, he can take almost anyone on. I think Mr. Satan really goes to show just how uber powerful the characters in this anime are. He's viewed as weak, but we see him pulling a series of buses with a chain on his back. Then he rips a stack of 3 phone books in half with his bare hands. If Mr. Satan existed in the real world, he would be an absolute freak of nature and without a doubt the strongest man on the planet. Next up, it's Tien's buddy Chiaotzu. Yes, this little pale weirdo is from Earth. It was always confusing to me as a kid that some of the strangest looking characters like Chiaotzu and Krillin were actually human, but Goku and Vegeta weren't. Anyway, in terms of raw strength, Chiaotzu ain't really it, but considering how much training he does with Tien, there's no doubt he has some serious martial arts skills. And he's also the first human on here who uses ki, so being able to fly and use energy attacks is no small feat. Plus, Chiaotzu has an ability rarely used in Dragon Ball, and that's his psychic abilities. Goku's human twin, Yamcha. Seriously, why does this guy look like identical to the guy? It was even more obvious in Z when he started sporting a similar gi. Anyway, Yamcha has become the living embodiment of a meme at this point, and the butt of a lot of jokes, but he really isn't weak. He's just a really talented martial artist who couldn't keep up when enemies who could destroy entire planets with a single energy blast started showing up. Maybe he was kinda irrelevant even before that, but still, much like a couple other characters on here, Yamcha was much more impressive and relevant in Dragon Ball. He's been seen beating Goku. Sure, Goku was a kid at the time, but considering what we know about him now, that really shouldn't be overlooked. And even in Z, he wasn't, completely overlooked, like when he beat Olibu and Gorilla in a sparring match. Olibu having been able to go toe-to-toe with Pikkon, that's pretty crazy, and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but it was filler, so. Maybe being in the afterlife bolsters his power though, or maybe Olibu was holding back because it wasn't a full-on fight. Anyway, Yamcha. Videl. This girl is stronger than her father, Mr. Satan, so for a human, that really is saying a lot. So for starters, Videl is a super skilled martial artist, having trained under her father from a very young age. She was even fighting crime like a superhero when Gohan first met her in high school. I think part of what makes characters strong is not just their ability to dish out attacks though, but their ability to take them. Videl took an absolutely brutal beating from an enhanced form of Spopovich, and she ultimately came out alive. What makes Videl super impressive though is that she picked up ki pretty fast from Gohan, learning to fly in very little time. You can only imagine what Videl could have accomplished if she continued training under Gohan or an experienced ki user on a consistent basis, or if she was just used more in the show. Like many other human characters in Dragon Ball though, Videl kind of fell to the wayside. Master Roshi. This is one old dude you never want to mess with. Master Roshi is your classic anime mentor figure, responsible for training Goku to do some of his most famous attacks, like the Kamehameha, for example. Master Roshi is a master martial artist. In terms of pure skill and technique, Master Roshi is better than most. If it weren't for the massive differences in power levels for a lot of the more powerful characters in the series, Master Roshi would be a far bigger threat. But he's an old Earth dude that we actually still see fighting from time to time, which is pretty impressive considering how many insane monsters we have in the universe now. Master Roshi even fought in the Tournament of Power and didn't get eliminated immediately. That's an incredible feat in itself. Yeah, it's time for that age-old debate of who is stronger, Tien or Krillin. Well, I haven't talked about Krillin yet, so it's obvious what I think. Now, maybe I'm just being biased here, alright? As Krillin is one of my favorite Dragon Ball characters, but I just feel like he has more experience fighting opponents way stronger than him. But we'll talk more about Krillin in a bit. Tien is an incredibly powerful and skilled fighter, considering the fact that he's an Earthling. He takes his training very seriously, and in terms of raw skill, he probably edges Krillin out. Most of his best stuff is in Dragon Ball though, like his fights with Goku, which he was able to fight almost evenly in. He didn't do much after the Cell Saga in DBZ, but he did show up to save Gohan from Boo, but was laid out pretty soon after, which is probably the most notable thing he's done since. Yeah, Tien really got shafted. He's far stronger than he's given credit for, very underrated. As strong as Tien is though, it's hard for me to put him higher than Krillin, seeing as he isn't really around much anymore. The Krillster, as I like to call him. I've actually never called him that in my life. Look, at one point Krillin was known as Earth's strongest fighter. That name has to mean something, right? Krillin has gone head on with some of Dragon Ball's biggest villains like Frieza, for example, and though he certainly didn't win, he did manage to cut off his tail with his Destructo Disc. That always stuck out to me. And that's another thing, his Destructo Disc is one of the coolest attacks in Dragon Ball. We see it cut right through an entire mountain like butter. Krillin has also always been around, unlike a lot of the other Z fighters who have kind of fallen off over time, like Tien and Yamcha. And though Krillin may not have taken his training as seriously as someone like Tien, just imagine if he did, how strong he could end up being. Krillin also managed to accomplish all of his impressive feats without a nose. That's pretty amazing. Imagine trying to power up and fight the way he does, having to just breathe through his mouth, like some mouth breather. It's almost like being congested for literally your entire life. And finally, Krillin's taking this spot because Tien isn't technically a full human. Maybe I'm just desperate to find reasons to put Krillin at a better spot on the list. Fine, I'll admit it. Honestly, this one could go either way, but it's the Krillster for me all the way. And coming in at number 1 is Oob. So this kid is the human reincarnation of Kid Buu. Very weird, but he's undoubtedly the strongest human in the series. Even though we've only seen him briefly in the epilogue of Dragon Ball Z and GT of course, but that's not canon anymore. But we're starting to see him show up in Dragon Ball Super right now, with events taking place before said epilogue in Z. Oob basically has the potential of Kid Buu without the inherent evil inside him, so he's got the best of both worlds. Incredible potential power, but with a good heart, much like our main hero Goku. Depending how long Super goes on for, we could really see Oob flourish, and maybe the humans of Dragon Ball will finally get their chance to shine a bit, maybe even get a Super Saiyan-esque transformation too? Maybe?